Stories she fed a homeless man. He returned as a secret millionaire and... If you lost everything tomorrow, who do you think would still be by your side? It's a question many of us ponder in quiet moments, a hypothetical thought experiment designed to test the loyalty of those we hold dear. But I, Elias Thorne, founder of Ethelworks, a global conglomerate that had reshaped industries from sustainable energy to artificial intelligence, decided not to wait to find out. I didn't want to simply wonder, I needed to know. I became a beggar to learn the truth, and the truth, when it finally revealed itself, was far more shocking than any of my darkest imaginings. Have you ever looked at your life, at everything you've painstakingly built, and realized it was nothing but an elaborate, hollow shell? That was my reality. I was 72 years old, surrounded by immense wealth, power, and the echoing void of genuine human connection. My life had become a meticulously crafted performance, every interaction a negotiation, every smile a potential hidden agenda. From the outside, my existence was the epitome of success. My name was synonymous with innovation, philanthropy, and vision. But within the gilded cage I had inadvertently constructed, I was suffocating. The air felt thin, the silence deafening, and the faces around me, though ostensibly friendly, felt utterly alien. I yearned for authenticity, for a moment of true, unvarnished human interaction that wasn't tainted by my fortune. Ethelworks was more than just a company, it was my life's work, a testament to innovation and a dream of a better future. I'd poured every ounce of my being into its creation, working tirelessly from a small garage, driven by a fierce belief that technology could serve humanity. I remembered those early days vividly, the camaraderie with my small team, the shared excitement over every breakthrough, the late nights fueled by cheap coffee and unshakable optimism. We built something truly revolutionary, something that genuinely improved lives. But the very success of it had, paradoxically, built impenetrable walls around me. My wealth, once a simple tool for creation, had become a formidable barrier, a magnet for sycophants and opportunists. People would orbit me, their eyes gleaming with an unspoken hunger, their words dripping with exaggerated praise. They saw not me, Elias, the man who remembered the sting of poverty and the satisfaction of honest work, but a walking, talking embodiment of opportunity, a golden goose to be placated and exploited. I recall a particularly egregious instance, years ago, during the launch of our groundbreaking AI ethical framework. A junior executive, barely out of business school, had approached me, tears in his eyes, professing his undying admiration, claiming my vision had single-handedly inspired his career path. Later that week, I overheard him in the executive lounge, boasting to colleagues about how he had charmed the old man into approving a questionable budget allocation. It was a small incident, but it chipped away at my soul, a constant reminder that my true self was irrelevant, only my influence mattered. Even my philanthropy, once a source of quiet, profound satisfaction, had devolved into a public relations exercise. It was managed by those who cared more for the optics than the actual impact. I funded grand galas, watched my name emblazoned on buildings, and yet, I felt profoundly disconnected from the very causes I sought to champion. I signed checks for millions to initiatives I barely understood, relying on reports filtered through layers of bureaucracy, all meticulously crafted to present a pristine image. The superficiality was nauseating. I remembered personally visiting a small village in Africa, years ago, where Ethelworks had funded a new solar power grid. The joy in the villagers' eyes, the genuine gratitude, had filled me with a warmth I rarely felt. Now, such direct interaction was impossible, replaced by polished presentations and staged photo opportunities. It was all a performance, and I was merely the wealthy prop. It reached a crescendo one evening, during another one of these charity galas, a dazzling display of designer gowns, hollow laughter, and performative generosity. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont, a venue I had personally funded the renovation of years ago, pulsed with a synthetic energy. Every surface gleamed, reflecting the cold ambition in the room. I watched my grandniece, Serafina Vance, glide across the ballroom, a picture of effortless elegance, yet her eyes held a cold, calculating glint that belied her radiant smile. She managed one of Ethelwerk's charitable foundations, or rather, she used it as her personal stage, a backdrop for her relentless social climbing. Her fiancé, Sterling Kane, was never far from her side, a man whose ambition was as transparent as his expensive watch, a limited edition timepiece that whispered of status and whispered even louder of his eagerness to acquire more. I'd seen enough men like him in my life, ruthless, charming, utterly devoid of genuine empathy. They both saw my eventual passing as their personal lottery win, and they made little effort to conceal their impatience, often discussing succession or legacy within earshot, as if I were already a ghost, a mere obstacle to their lavish future. That night, a profound weariness settled over me. I looked at the faces around me, a sea of smiles that didn't reach the eyes, and I knew I couldn't go on like this. The weight of my fortune, once a source of pride, had become an unbearable burden. I yearned for something real, something unvarnished by the distorting lens of my wealth. I needed to know if true kindness, true compassion, still existed in this world, or if it had been entirely consumed by avarice. A desperate, almost reckless idea began to form in my mind, a radical experiment of the soul. I would strip away all the trappings of my identity, shed my wealth, my power, my very name. I would become invisible, a cipher, a forgotten man on the fringes of society. I would become Silas. The transformation was meticulous, almost artistic, a clandestine operation orchestrated with the precision of a military exercise. My team, a select few individuals I trusted implicitly, individuals whose loyalty had been forged not by wealth but by shared history and genuine respect, helped me orchestrate it. My longtime personal assistant, Margaret, initially resisted, her eyes brimming with concern, but ultimately understood the profound need driving me. My head of security, a former Special Forces operative named Reese, handled the logistical nightmare of making Elias Thorne temporarily vanish from the public eye. They found me a secluded, nondescript apartment in a forgotten corner of the city, arranged for a modest stipend that would allow me to maintain the charade without truly suffering, a carefully measured amount that would simulate genuine destitution without exposing me to absolute danger. They helped me craft the disguise, paying attention to every agonizing detail. My once sharp, tailored suits, each a masterpiece of sartorial elegance, were replaced by threadbare, oversized clothing, subtly aged, stained, and subtly worn in a way that screamed neglect. My silver hair, usually impeccably styled by my private barber, was allowed to grow wild, matted, and discolored with a special, temporary dye. A professional makeup artist, sworn to absolute secrecy, taught me how to alter my posture, my gait, to stoop and shuffle, adding years of manufactured frailty to my otherwise robust frame. My voice, usually resonant and commanding, was softened, made raspy and hesitant, deliberately practiced to convey a lifetime of hardship. I cultivated a perpetually tired, almost defeated expression, my eyes dulled to hide the fire that still burned within. The prosthetic effects were subtle but remarkably effective, making my face appear gaunt and weathered, with a few strategically placed sores and subtle discoloration to suggest neglect and poor hygiene. I even trained myself, under the guidance of a former survivalist, to go for extended periods without showering, to truly embody the smell and feel of destitution, a physical discomfort that served as a constant, visceral reminder of my new reality. This wasn't merely a costume, it was an immersion, a profound dive into a world I had only ever observed from a distance, a world I now had to inhabit. The first few days as Silas were disorienting, frightening even. The sheer cold indifference of strangers was a physical blow. The way people instinctively averted their gaze, the sudden invisibility I experienced, it was a stark contrast to a lifetime of being recognized, revered, even feared. I remember one particularly jarring incident. I was sitting on a park bench, attempting to read a discarded newspaper, when a young couple walked by. The woman, upon seeing me, clutched her purse tighter and steered her partner sharply away, as if my mere presence were a contagion. It was a powerful, humiliating lesson in how society views those without status, a painful awakening to the dehumanizing lens through which the poor are often perceived. But with each passing day, I grew more comfortable in my new skin, or rather, my new rags. I learned the rhythms of the streets, the unspoken codes, the subtle language of survival. I discovered the best spots for discarded food, the safest corners to rest, the unspoken hierarchy among the truly homeless. My purpose solidified. I was not merely pretending to be homeless, I was conducting an investigation into the human heart. And the primary subjects of my experiment would be Serafina and Sterling, the very people who stood to inherit my legacy. I wanted to see if their true colors, hidden beneath layers of designer silk and polished manners, would reveal themselves when confronted with someone who could offer them absolutely nothing. I wanted to see if their greed was merely a veneer, or if it ran bone deep. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise on a performance where I, the director, was also the most unassuming actor. The question was not if they would fail my test, but how spectacularly. So, how did my greedy family treat the poor old uncle? The grand charity gala, ironically, became the perfect crucible for my experiment. It was held at the city's most opulent hotel ballroom, a place I had personally funded the renovation of years ago, a place now shimmering with a cruel irony. The air thrummed with the low hum of expensive conversation, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the sweet, cloying scent of lilies and ambition. I, as Silas, a frail, elderly homeless man, made my way to the service entrance, the back alleys a stark contrast to the glittering facade of wealth. The stench of stale garbage and exhaust fumes clung to the narrow passageways, a harsh counterpoint to the perfumed air within. My tattered coat offered little protection against the crisp evening air, but the chill in my bones was more metaphorical than literal. I was filled with a strange mix of apprehension and grim resolve, my heart pounding a slow, deliberate rhythm against my ribs. This was it. The moment of truth. Through a small gap in the service door, I could glimpse the dazzling spectacle within. Serafina, draped in a gown of shimmering emerald silk that must have cost more than most people earn in a year, laughed a tinkling, artificial laugh, her hand resting delicately on Sterling's arm. They were the perfect picture of success, a power couple on the cusp of an even greater fortune. My fortune. I watched them, a silent, unseen specter, observing their every move. They were holding court near a table laden with untouched gourmet dishes, an elaborate display of culinary artistry meant more for show than consumption. Their conversation was punctuated by self-congratulatory remarks and veiled boasts about their expanding social influence. Gathering my courage, and putting on the most pathetic, humble demeanor I could muster, I shuffled towards the service door. My practiced shuffle, my downcast eyes, my slightly trembling hands, every detail was designed to evoke pity, to make myself appear utterly harmless and desperate. A young, harried security guard, likely an agency hire, eyed me suspiciously. He was new to the venue, a fresh face among the usual grizzled veterans I knew by name. "Excuse me, sir," I rasped, my voice barely audible, raw from days of simulated cold and infrequent use. I was wondering if there might be any discarded meals. Just a scrap, perhaps. Anything at all. I made sure my eyes were downcast, my shoulders hunched, the picture of abject desperation. The guard hesitated, his expression caught between annoyance and a flicker of pity. Then, spotting Serafina and Sterling momentarily alone near the door, momentarily disengaged from their fawning audience, he decided to demonstrate his vigilance, to prove his worth. "Hey, you! Get out of here! This is a private event," he barked, louder than necessary, his voice echoing slightly in the service corridor. His voice carried, precisely as I had hoped, and Serafina and Sterling turned, their expressions shifting from polite disinterest to open disdain, a mask of social grace instantly replaced by undisguised revulsion. Serafina's perfectly sculpted brows furrowed, her face twisting into a grimace. "What is this, Gerald?" she demanded, her voice sharp, cutting through the general buzz of the room like a razor. "We can't have vagrants loitering near the entrance. It's utterly unseemly. It completely ruins the ambience." Her gaze flickered over my ragged form, a look of pure revulsion on her face, as if I were a particularly unpleasant stain on her expensive carpet, an unsightly blemish on her meticulously curated evening. Sterling, ever the opportunist, ever eager to assert his authority and align himself with Serafina's disdain, stepped forward, radiating an aura of polished contempt. "Honestly, Serafina, this is precisely why we need to implement stricter security protocols at these events. It compromises the entire image of the Foundation, undermining all our hard work." He looked at me, his eyes cold and devoid of any warmth, any recognition of common humanity. Look at him. Probably just looking for an easy handout to fuel his next vice. There's plenty of soup kitchens for people like this. He gestured vaguely, his hand waving dismissively, as if swatting away an inconvenient insect. I met his gaze for a fleeting moment, and saw no flicker of recognition, no hint of compassion. Only a smug, self-satisfied superiority, a complete and utter lack of empathy. It was exactly what I had expected, yet the reality of it, the raw, unfiltered cruelty, still stung, a bitter taste in my mouth. "Please, just a plate," I whispered, my voice cracked, the feigned desperation now mingled with genuine hurt. "I haven't eaten properly in days." Serafina let out a small, scoffing laugh, a sound like glass shattering. "Oh, the dramatics. Darling, don't encourage him. If we give him one plate, he'll bring all his friends. This is a gala for giving, not for taking directly from our tables." She turned back to Sterling, dismissing me entirely, as if I had ceased to exist the moment her attention shifted. Honestly, the sheer nerve of some people. It's a miracle we get anything done with these distractions. It's simply exhausting. Then, they began to speak louder, intentionally, as if to emphasize their disdain and distance themselves further from my perceived squalor, to ensure their words carried to any nearby guests. "Still, darling," Sterling continued, ignoring my presence completely, his voice resonating with an air of conspiratorial excitement, "once Elias finally steps down, and we take the reins, we can rebrand the Foundation entirely. Less of this feeding the hungry nonsense, more focus on, say, innovation in luxury living or sustainable private jet travel. Something with real impact on our social standing, something that elevates us." He winked at Serafina, who giggled, her eyes sparkling with avarice. "Exactly." Serafina chimed in, her voice carrying across the opulent room, a clear signal of their utter lack of concern for who might overhear. "And then, with the full Thorn fortune at our disposal, we can finally acquire that villa in Tuscany. Elias's old accountant has been hinting about the estate planning, and darling, it's substantial. Imagine, Sterling, no more needing to put up with his antiquated ideas about humility and social responsibility. We can finally live life on our own terms, without his constant moralizing. His era is over." They openly discussed their extravagant plans, their eyes alight with avarice, completely oblivious to the man shivering just a few feet away, the man whose fortune they were so eagerly anticipating. My heart, already heavy with disappointment, sank further, a leaden weight in my chest. My grandniece and her fiancé, two people I had once considered family, were not merely selfish, they were devoid of basic human decency, utterly unburdened by conscience. They saw me, Silas, as less than human, an inconvenience, a blight on their perfect evening. The words were a confirmation of my worst fears, a bitter truth served cold, piercing through the layers of my carefully constructed disguise. Just as I felt a profound wave of despair wash over me, threatening to drown my resolve, a different voice cut through the cacophony of their cruel laughter and indifferent chatter. "Here, sir." I looked up, genuinely startled. It was a young woman, no older than her early 20s, dressed in the crisp white uniform of a kitchen assistant. Her name tag, slightly askew, read Kehlani. She had dark, kind eyes, and her face, though tired from what I imagined were long hours, held a genuine warmth that was utterly absent in Serafina and Sterling. She had clearly witnessed the entire exchange, her expression a mix of embarrassment, quiet fury, and profound empathy. She held out a sturdy, lidded container, wrapped in a napkin for warmth. "It's a hot meal," she whispered, her voice low so as not to draw further attention from the security guard or my family, left over from the staff dinner. "Chicken, rice, and some vegetables. It's still warm. Please, take it." Her hand was trembling slightly, but her gaze was steady, compassionate, utterly focused on me. She risked her job, I knew, just by speaking to me, let alone offering food from the catering supplies. The security guard was still nearby, watching with a disgruntled expression, but Kehlani's focus was entirely on me, on my perceived need. "Are you sure?" I rasped, genuinely surprised by the unexpected kindness, a stark contrast to the icy reception just moments before. It was a small gesture, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but in that moment, it felt monumental, a beacon in the cold darkness that had descended upon me. "Yes, of course," she said, offering a small, sympathetic smile. "Everyone deserves a warm meal, especially when they're hungry. Don't mind them," she added, glancing pointedly at Serafina and Sterling, who were now engrossed in a conversation with another guest, completely oblivious, having moved further into the ballroom. "They don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand." I took the container, my fingers brushing hers. Her touch was warm, human, a stark contrast to the icy dismissal I had just received. It was a touch devoid of judgment, pure in its intent. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion, the raw sincerity of it escaping my carefully constructed rasp. "Thank you, truly." I looked into her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I saw not greed, not calculation, not scorn, but pure, unadulterated empathy, an innate goodness that shone brightly despite her humble circumstances. It was a profound experience, a moment of genuine human connection that transcended my disguise, shattering the illusion of my invisibility. It solidified my resolve, crystallizing my path forward. Serafina and Sterling had revealed their true characters, cruel and venal. Kehlani, on the other hand, had shown me that virtue still existed, quietly, in the most unexpected places. My experiment was not over, it had just given me a very clear direction, a new purpose beyond mere exposure. The future of Ethelworks, and my legacy, would be reshaped, guided by this newfound understanding. But every game has an end, right? And this particular game, my elaborate charade as Silas, was about to reach its climactic conclusion. The gala had provided me with all the evidence I needed, cementing my conviction that Serafina and Sterling were utterly unfit to carry on my legacy, to inherit the vast enterprise I had poured my life into. But merely confronting them in the street, or in a private office, wouldn't be enough. The reveal had to be public, undeniable, and utterly devastating. I wanted the shock to ripple through their carefully constructed world, to dismantle their ambitions piece by agonizing piece, to strip them of the very social standing they so desperately craved. I spent the next few weeks meticulously planning the grand finale, every detail considered, every contingency accounted for. I allowed them to continue believing their ascent was inevitable, let them bask in the smug anticipation of my retirement, a retirement I had no intention of taking in the way they imagined. My trusted legal team, led by the formidable Alastair Finch, was brought into the fold. Alastair, a man whose reputation for discretion and legal acumen was legendary, initially expressed profound shock when I revealed my masquerade, but quickly grasped the gravity and necessity of my actions. He helped me prepare the necessary documents, the intricate legal instruments that would sever Serafina and Sterling's ties to Ethelworks and my fortune with surgical precision, ensuring there would be no loopholes, no avenues for appeal. The stage for the reveal was chosen carefully, the quarterly board meeting of Ethelworks. This was where the most influential stakeholders, the company's directors, and key executives gathered. Serafina and Sterling, as members of the Thorne family legacy, and Sterling as an aspiring general counsel, were not only expected to attend but considered themselves integral to the proceedings. In fact, they believed this particular meeting was their opportunity to present their vision for the future of Ethelworks Charitable Foundation, a vision I knew would be nothing more than a thinly veiled rebranding of their personal desires for luxury and self-promotion. I even arranged, through subtle channels, for an unofficial agenda item, a discussion on the future leadership structure of the foundation, subtly framed to allow them to articulate their greedy intentions with maximum clarity, unknowingly digging their own graves. The day of the meeting dawned clear and cold, a crisp autumn morning that belied the storm brewing within the corporate tower. I arrived at the Ethelworks corporate headquarters not as Silas, but as Elias Thorne, meticulously groomed, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that exuded quiet authority, every silver hair in place, every cufflink gleaming. I had spent hours with my stylist, ensuring every detail projected power and unwavering control, a visual statement of my return to dominance. As I stepped out of the sleek, black Rolls-Royce, Alastair Finch by my side, I felt a surge of exhilaration, a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about justice, it was about reclaiming my narrative, redefining my legacy, ensuring the future of Ethelworks truly reflected the values upon which it was built. I entered the grand boardroom, a space I had designed myself years ago, its walls adorned with abstract art and panoramic views of the city, a testament to my past achievements. The meeting was already in session, precisely as planned. Serafina and Sterling stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, radiating an almost arrogant confidence. Serafina was presenting a slideshow, her voice modulated to sound authoritative and poised, while Sterling nodded sagely beside her, occasionally interjecting with legal jargon designed to impress the board members, most of whom were stoic veterans, listening with varying degrees of interest, unaware of the impending earthquake. The moment my presence registered, a palpable hush fell over the room. Serafina froze mid-sentence, her mouth slightly agape, a word caught on her tongue. Sterling's carefully composed smile faltered, replaced by a look of bewildered confusion, then outright alarm. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, slowly tracked me as I walked towards the head of the table, my steps measured and deliberate, each one a hammer blow to their illusions. "Good morning, everyone," I announced, my voice clear and resonant, carrying the weight of decades of leadership, a voice that commanded attention. "Please, carry on. I merely wish to observe the discussion on the future of the Ethelworks Foundation." I took my seat at the head of the table, the very chair they had assumed would soon be theirs, the seat of ultimate authority. Serafina recovered first, albeit awkwardly, her composure cracking under the strain. "Uncle Elias. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you to join us today." Her voice was strained, a hint of panic in her eyes. "We thought you were indisposed." She shot a nervous, desperate glance at Sterling, who was now visibly sweating, his previously confident facade crumbling. "Indisposed?" I mused, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips, a predator's smile. "On the contrary, Serafina. I've been quite occupied with some very insightful research into the true nature of human character. A most enlightening experience, I assure you." My gaze swept across the room, lingering momentarily on Serafina and Sterling, who were exchanging frantic, silent questions, their eyes darting nervously. Sterling cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure, to project his usual smooth confidence. "Well, Uncle Elias, we were just outlining our exciting new vision for the foundation. A more modern, impactful approach, moving away from some of the less efficient, shall we say, traditional methods. We believe in maximizing our global reach through strategic partnerships and high-profile branding. He puffed out his chest, but his eyes betrayed a deep unease, a dawning comprehension that something was terribly wrong. Less efficient methods, I repeated, my tone even, almost conversational, but with an underlying steel that made several board members shift uncomfortably, sensing the shift in the room's power dynamics. Are you perhaps referring to methods that involve feeding the genuinely hungry, Sterling? Or providing shelter to those without? Or perhaps, directly aiding communities in need, rather than merely funding lavish galas for public relations? Serafina's face paled further, her carefully applied makeup unable to conceal the sudden rush of blood from her cheeks. No, of course not, Uncle. We simply believe in a more strategic allocation of resources. For instance, focusing on high-profile cultural initiatives that generate positive media attention, rather than direct handouts. It's about sustainable impact, not just temporary fixes. She gestured vaguely, her eyes desperately avoiding mine, her words a desperate attempt to spin their intentions. I leaned forward, my hands clasped on the polished table, my gaze unwavering. I see. Tell me, Serafina, Sterling, do either of you recall a recent incident at the gala, where an elderly, homeless man approached the service entrance, humbly requesting a discarded meal? Their faces drained of all color, becoming ashen. Serafina's jaw dropped, her lips parting in a silent gasp. Sterling, for the first time I could ever recall, looked utterly speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, his usual smooth articulation completely gone. The other board members exchanged confused glances, sensing a monumental shift in the atmosphere, a palpable tension, a looming storm that was about to break. Do you remember ridiculing him, Serafina? I continued, my voice gaining a quiet power that filled the room, each word a precise, damning indictment. Dismissing him as unseemly. Do you remember, Sterling, lecturing him about vice and soup kitchens, all while he shivered in the cold, hungry and desperate? Serafina stammered, her voice a reedy whisper, Uncle, I don't know what you're talking about. There was a vagrant, yes, but he was dealt with. It was an unfortunate incident. A misunderstanding. An unfortunate incident for whom, Serafina? I asked, my voice dangerously soft, yet carrying an undeniable force. For the man who was hungry? Or for the two individuals who revealed their true, callous nature under the illusion of anonymity, believing themselves safe from consequence? I paused, letting the words hang in the air, a heavy, suffocating silence. Because I remember that incident with absolute clarity. Every sneering word, every dismissive gesture. Every cruel, calculated plan you discussed about my inevitable inheritance and your Tuscan villa while a human being starved at your feet. I remember it all. I pushed a button on the conference table, and a large screen descended from the ceiling, its display lighting up the room. It displayed a high-resolution, zoomed-in security camera footage from the gala's service entrance, time-stamped for that specific night. It showed Silas, my disguised self, approaching the door, looking frail and desperate. It then showed Serafina and Sterling, their faces contorted in disdain, their gestures dismissive, their mouths moving in what was clearly an aggressive and belittling conversation with the homeless man. The audio, though muffled, captured snippets of their conversation about my inheritance, about their plans for the Thorn fortune, about my antiquated ideas. Then, chillingly, it showed Kailani, the young kitchen assistant, discreetly handing Silas a hot meal, her face full of genuine concern and compassion, a stark contrast to the venomous expressions of my grandniece and her fiancé. The room was utterly silent, save for the faint hum of the projector. Serafina and Sterling stared at the screen, their faces a horrifying mixture of dawning recognition and abject terror. The realization, slow and painful, was written all over their features, a ghastly pallor spreading across their skin. The vagrant, the nuisance, the unseemly distraction, was me. Their eyes flickered to my face, then back to the screen, then to my face again, the horror solidifying into an unbearable truth. Their elaborate charade, their carefully constructed future, was crumbling before their very eyes. Yes, I said, my voice now devoid of any pretense, any softness, that vagrant, Seraphina, Sterling, was me. Elias Thorne. Your dear, old, indisposed Uncle Elias. And now, I believe we have a great deal to discuss about the future of Ethelworks and my legacy. The gasp that rippled through the boardroom was palpable. Seraphina let out a small, choked cry, her hand flying to her mouth. Sterling's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, his eyes bulging, his perfectly coiffed hair suddenly seeming disheveled. The game was truly over. The immediate fallout was swift and brutal, a perfectly executed dismantling of their carefully constructed lives, a public and undeniable repudiation of their avarice. Seraphina and Sterling stood frozen, their faces ashen, as my words, delivered with cold, surgical precision, laid bare their transgressions. The security footage, now paused on a close-up of their sneering faces, served as an irrefutable, silent indictment, a damning piece of evidence that none could dispute. Seraphina Vance, I began, my voice cutting through the stunned silence like a diamond, your position as director of the Ethelworks Charitable Foundation is hereby terminated, effective immediately. Your gross negligence, profound lack of empathy, and blatant misuse of the Foundation's mandate for personal gain and public image are utterly unacceptable and a betrayal of everything this company stands for. Furthermore, all access to Thorne family trusts, any anticipated inheritance, and any future claim on my estate is irrevocably revoked. You will receive a severance package commensurate with your actual contributions, which, I assure you, are minimal and frankly, an insult to the work of true philanthropy. Seraphina collapsed into her chair, a pathetic sob escaping her lips, her body shaking uncontrollably. Her dreams of Tuscan villas, of socialite glory, of endless wealth, evaporated into thin air, leaving only the bitter taste of public humiliation. Then, I turned my attention to Sterling, who stood rigid, his hands clasped tightly, as if trying to hold himself together. Sterling Kane, your employment application for general counsel, as well as any other position within Ethelworks, is rejected. Your ambition, while admirable in a different context, is poisoned by a ruthless disregard for human dignity and a predatory focus on wealth accumulation. Your engagement to my grandniece is, of course, a personal matter, but I trust you understand that any future association with the Thorne name, Ethelworks assets, or any of my endeavors is now entirely impossible. Your professional reputation, should you have any left after this, will speak for itself. Sterling, usually so smooth and articulate, could only stammer incoherent apologies, his face blotchy with humiliation, his eyes darting around the room, desperate for an escape. The grand future he had envisioned, built on marrying into my fortune, had just imploded in the most spectacular and public fashion imaginable. Alastair Finch, my lawyer, stepped forward and silently handed them official termination and legal restriction documents, their expressions grim and unyielding. The public humiliation they had inflicted on Silas was now met with a public, irreversible downfall of their own. Their desperate pleas and denials were met with an unyielding gaze from me, and the silent, judging stares of the entire board. The irony was not lost on me. They had dismissed me, the man who held their future in his hands, as a beggar. Now, they were begging. But this was not merely about punishment, it was about reward, about recognizing true virtue in a world often blinded by superficiality. Now, I announced, my tone shifting, softening slightly, I would like to introduce you all to someone who represents the true spirit of what Ethelworks, and indeed, humanity, should strive for. Someone who reminded me that genuine compassion still exists, even in the most unexpected corners. I pressed a button, and a new image appeared on the screen, Kelani, her face illuminated by the subtle light of the kitchen, carefully handing me, as Silas, the warm meal, her expression radiating kindness. Kelani, I continued, my voice now imbued with warmth and pride, a young woman who, despite her own modest circumstances, despite the risk to her own livelihood, risked her job to offer a stranger a warm meal, a kind word, and a moment of genuine human connection. An act performed without expectation of reward, without any knowledge of who I truly was. An act of pure, unadulterated compassion, a rare and precious commodity in our world. Alastair Finch then opened the boardroom door, and Kelani stepped in, looking utterly bewildered, her eyes wide with apprehension. She was still in her crisp kitchen uniform, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. She had been told only that she was needed for a special consultation related to the gala, and the sight of me, Elias Thorne, in such a formal setting, surrounded by powerful individuals, clearly overwhelmed her. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, her vulnerability a stark contrast to the hardened faces of the board. Kelani, I said, my voice warm and genuine, a gentle smile on my face, please, come forward. She hesitantly approached the table, her gaze flitting between me and the stunned faces of the board members, carefully avoiding the crushed, resentful figures of Serafina and Sterling, who were now slumped in their chairs, refusing to look at anyone. Kelani, I repeated, a gentle smile on my face, do you remember an old man, a homeless man, you helped at the gala a few weeks ago? Her eyes widened in recognition, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. Yes, sir, I do, she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with uncertainty. I hope I wasn't out of line. I just thought, he looked so hungry. You were precisely in line, Kelani, I affirmed, my voice ringing with conviction, my eyes meeting hers directly. You were more in line with the true spirit of humanity than anyone else in that room, including myself, for merely observing. Your actions that night revealed a depth of character, an integrity, and a compassion that money cannot buy, that education cannot teach, that status can never bestow. I paused, letting the weight of my next words sink in, not just for Kelani, but for everyone in that room. Effective immediately, Kelani, you are no longer a kitchen assistant. Your selflessness has earned you a place of true leadership within the Ethelworks family. I am establishing a new foundation, entirely separate from the one previously managed, focused on direct, impactful community aid, free from the constraints of public relations and personal gain. I want you to be its inaugural director. Kelani gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears, her disbelief palpable. Director? Me? Sir, I don't understand. I'm just a kitchen assistant. I don't have the experience, or the education. Her humility, even in the face of such an incredible reward, shone brighter than any diamond. You are a visionary, Kelani, I corrected gently, my voice firm with certainty, a person with a heart of gold and the courage to act on it. Experience can be gained, education can be acquired, but true character is inherent. You will be provided with a full scholarship to the university of your choice, to study whatever you desire, business management, social work, public policy, anything that will equip you for this new, vital role. You will receive a generous salary, commensurate with your new responsibilities, and all the resources you need to make a genuine, tangible difference in the world. This is not charity, Kelani. This is an investment. An investment in a better future, guided by true virtue, by the principles that truly matter. She stared at me, tears streaming down her face, her disbelief slowly giving way to overwhelmed gratitude. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Thank you. Her voice choked with emotion, but a quiet strength was already beginning to emerge in her eyes. It was a profound vindication, a moment that truly restored my faith in humanity. The contrast between her genuine, overwhelmed gratitude and the bitter, resentful silence of Serafina and Sterling was a testament to the fundamental truth of human character. So what happened to them all? The aftermath unfolded with a quiet, satisfying certainty, a natural consequence of their actions. Serafina and Sterling vanished from the social scene almost overnight, their carefully cultivated reputations in tatters. The board, having witnessed the brutal exposé, swiftly ratified my decisions, distancing Ethelworks from the scandal. Without access to the Thorn fortune, without the immense social capital they had relied upon, their lavish lifestyle became utterly unsustainable. Sterling's legal career, tainted by the scandal, withered, his once promising future now a wasteland of closed doors and whispered condemnations. Serafina, stripped of her position and her expected inheritance, was forced to confront a reality she had always disdained, living without the endless cushion of wealth, without the sycophantic circles that had once fed her ego. I heard whispers of them selling off assets, retreating to a much smaller, less opulent existence, their names becoming synonymous with public disgrace, a cautionary tale whispered in the high society circles they had once so desperately sought to conquer. Their ambition, unmoored from any moral compass, had ultimately consumed them, leaving them with nothing but the emptiness they had always projected onto others. For me, Elias Thorne, the peace of mind that followed was profound, a weight lifted from my very soul. The experiment had been painful in its revelations, exposing the darkest corners of human nature, but ultimately liberating. I had seen the worst, but more importantly, I had found its best. With Kehlani at the helm, the new Ethelworks Foundation flourished, becoming a beacon of genuine compassion, a testament to what true purpose could achieve. She brought a fresh perspective, a grassroots understanding of need, and an unwavering dedication that transformed lives. Guided by her innate empathy and my resources, she implemented programs focused on sustainable food security, vocational training for the homeless, comprehensive mental health support, and truly empowering individuals, not just providing temporary fixes or public relations stunts. It became everything I had always envisioned my philanthropy to be, but rarely saw realized. Kehlani, with my guidance and support, grew into a formidable and compassionate leader, her once timid demeanor replaced by a quiet strength and conviction that inspired everyone around her. I watched her, proud to have played a part in unleashing such a force for good. My legacy, once threatened by superficiality and greed, was now secured, not in grand buildings or vast fortunes, but in the hands of true virtue, in the genuine impact we were making on the world. I learned my lesson about human nature. It is not in the grand gestures or the public displays that character is forged, but in the quiet moments, the unseen choices, the interactions we have with those who can offer us absolutely nothing in return. It is in those moments that the true essence of who we are, whether good or ill, is truly revealed. Our channel is full of stories like this. If you found this tale of deception, greed, and unexpected kindness compelling, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next story. And I have a question for you: have you ever been surprised by someone's true colors, for better or for worse? Tell me your story in the comments below.